Welcome to the Fantasy Fangirls Podcast, where two sisters dive deep into beloved fantasy lore, characters, themes, theories, and more.
I'm Lexi.
And I'm Nicole.
Today's bonus episode focuses on the Kindred Curse series by Penn Cole, where we're discussing theories and speculation for the fourth and final installment of this amazing series, Burn of the Everflame.
Lexi and I got into the series about a month ago, last month, when we did Spark of the Everflame for our book club, which won by a flippin' landslide. We were, not gonna lie, a little nervous about like, oh my gosh, this is like a lot of pages of a book. Like, we know we want to read the entire series before we start book club. We devoured this series, like lightning speed. And we were so freaking honored because we got to interview Penn Cole during our book club meeting, and she dropped a lot of goodies for Burn of the Everflame.
She really did. This series has possibly my favorite world building and magic system, and that really says a lot.
Yeah.
And it has tons of Easter eggs sprinkled throughout the books, making it perfect for theories as we wait for the final book's release. Like, I was so giddy getting prepared for this. It was like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm back in the Empyrean series. It has those same vibes with like just the little Easter eggs just everywhere.
I'm so excited. But let's talk about Burn of the Everflame's release date real quick, because according to Amazon, it comes out on July 31st. However, we have learned from Penn herself that this is a placeholder date and the real release date still remains unknown even to her. There are some external factors at work causing delays. So all we know right now is that it will be here soon, according to Penn, like within the next few months. So we do have links to all of the books, including pre-ordering Burn of the Everflame, in the show notes for you to devour and parse through like we did.
And then as soon as we confirm Burn's release date, we will absolutely be sure to share with you all. But until then, let's have fun and talk theories as we wait. Before we dive into this bonus episode, as always, please listen closely to our content warning. We are talking spoilers for all three released books of the Kindred Curse series. That includes Spark of the Everflame, Glow of the Everflame, and Heat of the Everflame. We are also, of course, pulling insights and teasers for Burn of the Everflame that Penn Cole has shared in recent interviews.
She also gave us some juicy details during our book club meeting, and we are absolutely pulling those into this episode.
We're also going to pull just a tiny bit from the first 3 chapters of Burn that Penn recently released via her newsletter, but it's not the focus of today's episode by any means. If you're like, wait, what? She released Burn chapters? Don't worry, we added the link to access them in the show notes as well.
So, with all that said, if you don't know why we are hoping for a happy ending for everyone, but specifically Sarai and Tybalt, then please go read 1,800 pages of world-building masterpiece. We will be here when you're done.
And then, of course, we of Fantasy Fangirls are adults who say adult things about adult books. In other words, friends, this podcast is rated R.
I will take almost every opportunity to mention Luther Corbois, wielder of shadows, jeweled swords, and words such as good girl. So please be mindful of those little listening ears.
Last thing before we jump into Burn of the Everflame predictions, theories, and more. If you love Fantasy Fangirls and want more content, more community, more events, early access to ad-free deep dive episodes, copies of our gigantic outlines, behind the scenes from us, and recordings of author interviews, including the one with Penn that we will frequently reference in this episode, please check out our Patreon.
We have 3 membership tiers that you can join: the Valkyries for $5 a month, the High Fae for $10 a month, and our brand new, like released yesterday, tier, the Inner Circle, for $25 a month. Our Patreon is a group of just the best people in the entire flippin' world. Specifically, like on our Discord, we've been talking so much about Burn of the Everflame theories, insights, parsing through foreshadowing. Like I just feel so honored with the community we've built. They're so great. We just adore you guys so much.
Join the Patreon party at patreon.com/fantasyfangirls. The link to join is, you guessed it, in the show notes or YouTube captions, depending how you're tuning in. Thank you so much for your support.
And now, it is time to parse through every prophecy, every diary entry, every apple slice in the lead up to Burn of the Everflame.
Let's kick this off with a quick recap of where things leave off in Heat.
First, we have the bonded bargain that Doriel, who is the Sophos crown, and Diem made. The bargain is as follows. Sophos does everything they can to convince the other crowns to vote for a pardon for Diem and her mother Orly, who is the leader of the Guardians, after the Guardian attack on Kareel at the end of Glow. And in exchange, Diem swears that she didn't know about the attack on the island, again at the end of Glow. And she vows to be the one to kill the man who led it, which is assumed to be her sire, Ophiuchi. If one of them, either Doriel or Diem, does not uphold their end of the bargain, that person will lose their magic. So in order to keep her powerful magic, Diem must be the one to kill, quote, the man who led the attack. But au contraire, Sophos betrays Diem and forces her to be bound to the island of Kareel. So she is unable to uphold her side of the bargain to kill this man.
Speaking of the island, to take control back of the Kindred Temple from the rebels, Sophos and the Crowns extend the Heartstone's defenses to kill any person who steps foot on this island without a crown, or any beast that flies over it, including Gryverns.
As everyone flees before the sunset deadline, Luther attempts to save Diem from the island. Sarai, her Gryvern, also comes to the rescue. And just in time, Sarai flies away with Luther and Teller, who sadly has to sacrifice Perth in the process. R.I.P. my dude. I love Perth. R.I.P. Diem, seeing her prince and brother fly away, thinks about how somehow, some way she will get back to her prince and they can officially be together and perform the mating ceremony.
Then we have big news with a few crowns. Right as Umbros had cast her vote for Diem and her mother's pardon, Igneos killed her. So now Diem has 4 crowns: Lumos, Fortos, Montios, and Umbros. But what's that? It might be 5 crowns soon, because as Umbros died, she scratched Igneos with Godstone on her nails. And remember, Godstone is basically a death sentence for the Descended, and the only cure is Diem's blood.
Once everyone is off the island and Diem is wistfully looking at her prince off in the sunset, oh no! It turns out that Igneos is still here because he thrusts a Godstone blade straight through Diem's heart.
Oh dear!
Pain and something warm and fuzzy fills Diem and she slumps to the ground. That's the end of the book. Cruel cliffhanger, Penn Cole.
All right, so now we know where things stand at the end of Heat. Let's turn our attention to what we know directly from Penn Cole going into Burn. First of all, it's roughly the same length as Heat of the Everflame, so we know this will be another thick book. Huzzah! Heat stirred up a lot of questions for us readers and Diem, so Burn will focus on tying up those loose ends. There will also be 3 POVs in Burn, and at least the first 3 chapters are from Luther's POV 1 month after Heat's cliffhanger.
We will also be learning more about the realm's crowns, but we do not visit as many territories as we did in Heat of the Everflame. Specifically, we will be learning more about the Miros King, but not visiting his realm, which is a shame because apparently that's where all the fun is at in the realm, except for Umbros. We will be learning more about Phanos, the queen of the Beasts Kingdom.
Andre's killer is apparently obvious, and the answer is in Book 2, Glow of the Everflame. Penn also told us that she hasn't seen anyone guess the correct answer, which is crazy because I've seen a lot of different guesses, and I know we'll be sharing ours today too. There is also a critical piece of information when it comes to the Kindred Curse that puts all the puzzle pieces together, and we do not have that information yet.
But we will be speculating on what it is today. Umbros's warnings throughout Heat of the Everflame lay the foundation for Burn and how we make our way into the climax of the series. So yes, we will also be parsing through basically every single thing that she said in Heat of the Everflame. We also know about a few scenes / plot points in Burn of the Everflame. We know that there's going to be a wedding, and so many things, good and bad, happen during it. From Penn, we also know that Luther confronts Igneos, and that is one of Penn's favorite scenes in Burn of the Everflame.
We will also see a lot of Sarai and Tybalt in Burn, and remember, Tybalt is Igneos' Gryvern, and I just really want them to have their happily ever after.
Last but not least, here's what we know from the sneak peek 3 chapters of Burn of the Everflame.
It's been 4 weeks since the ending cliffhanger of Heat, and Luther and Teller are in a rebel camp with Orly, gathering fighters for a future Diem army. Even though the forging spell has been cast by the Crowns, Luther still has occasional magic.
His compass is also, meaning Diem's compass that he has basically commandeered, is spinning around and around and around since the spell was cast on Kareel.
Vance is in Lumnos recruiting for Ophiuchai's army. Additionally, there was a message delivered by the Arboros Queen to the Guardians that the Crowns want to have a meeting together with the Guardians.
Luther believes that this meeting is to get the Guardians to fight for the crowns against Ophiuchai rather than the Guardians fighting for Diem. Luther and Arlie decide together to deny the invite to this meeting until they bring either a better offer or until they let Diem go.
All right, friends, with all of that said, who wants to dive into some theories and predictions about Burn of the Everflame? First, I do want to give a shout out to some of our incredible Discord members who have a running Google Doc of theories, questions, and important lines from the Kindred Curse series. Your insights and countless brainstorms over the past few months have been really helpful as we get our ducks in a row for this episode and just really dive in, and we just appreciate you so much.
But Lexi, you know me. I am a chronic to-do list person. I have a really hard time relaxing until everything is done, much like Luther and Diem. And even when I add relax to my to-do list, because yes, I do that, it somehow starts to feel like yet another thing I have to do. That's why I've started integrating ritual stress relief into my morning ritual.
This product uses first-of-its-kind technology to support the body's natural cortisol response so you can take daily. Rituals Stress Relief is so easy to use, and I know that when I use it, I'm starting my day right. I know that I'll be setting myself up for stress success the entire day.
Stress Relief Bioseries technology is designed to optimize the release of a trio of clinically studied ingredients to help the body manage stress. Ritual suggests taking a stress relief in the morning when cortisol is typically at its peak to support the body's natural cortisol response, with an instant and extended release formulation for all day support.
The juggle is real, friends. Don't just respond to stress. Get ahead of it with stress relief from Ritual. Get 25% off your first month at ritual.com/FFG. Start Ritual or add stress relief to your subscription today. That's ritual.com/FFG for 25% off. We have to first start with the theory that Luther and Diem are already mated by the end of Heat of the Everflame. But first, a refresher on what we know about mates in this world. To become mates, there is a ritual where the two individuals shed a drop of blood and commit their hearts to one another for eternity. If the magic declares your love to be genuine and unconditional, a mark appears, and your bodies become two halves of a whole. If you're away from your mate, you can get ill, your magic will weaken, and you can even die from the separation. If one mate is imprisoned, the other is permitted access to them at all times because to separate mates is an insult to the kindred themselves. Last thing here is when you run your fingers across the mating mark, it glows and the other can feel them touching the mark.
Okay, so that is how the mating bond works. Let's start with explaining how Luther could have performed this mating ritual, because yes, it would have been separate. After Luther and Diem bang, bang, bangity bang in the library in Sophos, they are eating apples, and Diem starts talking about their future, specifically about the apple orchard on their land that they'll acquire near her family's old cottage, and their house being something that they can grow into as a family. Luther goes still and silent for a long time, and then his knuckles go white. His hand slips from the apple and the knife, sending the knife slicing right over his heart. And when Diem's like, Luther, what the heck? You're a skilled warrior, my guy. Quote, he stared at me, lips parted, face bloodless. His eyes were aglow, but not with the usual luminous light, something warmer. Oh my God. I 100% believe that him going quiet for a long time is him in his head committing himself to Diem as mates, as future, and all that stuff together. And then he's like, oh no, oops, and just like slices his heart open.
Oh, so you think that he slipped and sliced himself on purpose?
No, well, on purpose, because he's like, yeah, he's like, let me commit the mating ritual right now. I absolutely think it was on purpose.
Interesting.
You don't?
I was under the impression that both of them will accidentally do the mating bond.
I don't think so. I think Luther knew something could happen where they might be separated, and he wanted to have this extra security for it where he would be connected to her. Because it can be a one-sided mating bond.
But why wouldn't it? But if she's essentially declaring her love for him, why wouldn't he be like, hey, you know what we should do right now?
Because earlier in the series, she was like, you know, I'm not the kind of person who could ever do that. And he's like, that's fine. I'll take what I can get. So I think that
okay, that's a good point. That's a good point.
So I definitely think he did this on purpose. Yes. I do not think he told her because he didn't know if she was like, let's absolutely be mates, or if she was like, I just see a future with you, because it might be different for her, but it's not. anymore.
True.
Now, another moment that supports this is when all hell breaks loose on the island at the end of Heat and Diem is trying to get Luther and tell her out. Sarai arrives and Luther says, quote, "It worked. It actually worked. I didn't think ... So if he and her are mates, or at least he is mated to her, we'll say, he would probably be able to call Sarai through the adjacent mating bond, I'll call it. And then when Diem asked, like, what worked? What are you talking about? Quote, his features strained, like he was holding something back, something desperately, painfully important.
Yep. Like,
yeah, absolutely. Okay, so that's how Luther could have gotten his mating mark. Let's talk about Diem now. Many people, including us, believe that when she was stabbed by Igneos at the very end of Heat, that solidified her end of the mating bond. Right before she's stabbed, Diem is looking at Luther and Sarai and tell her, like, flying off into the sunset. And she's thinking about how, because Luther is alive, there is a hope for a future between them. And as part of that future, the first thing that she does when she sees him next is she's going to offer up her blood and tell him that she's ready to be his, and then she's stabbed. The mating bond magic works where you are committing yourself to be someone's mate and then you give some blood, and then that's how the mating bond works. Looking at the mating ritual, this absolutely would count, just in a very Penn Cole style of writing way. But the big clue here is that the placement is identical to Luther's, quote, straight through the center of her heart. But more so in the writing around how her experience around getting stabbed. Because when you're first reading it, you're like, something's off here. Like, something's not right.
Well, when I first read it, I thought that it was how her body was reacting to the Godstone that was stabbing her.
I think that's what we're supposed to think.
Oh, I agree. But it's
absolutely.
Actually the mating bond. Yeah. Or it could always be both as well. Yeah.
Well, so let's talk about this language. It feels warm, which is the same language as is on Luther's face right after he cuts himself. It's described as being warm. It feels like her heart is being cut in half, which lines up with that two halves of one whole language from Eleanor and Taryn in Glow. And, quote, there was an unexpected pleasure in it too, a particular rightness, a feeling like I'd gained something I desperately wanted. It would also be so sweet if their mating mark is over their hearts, because they call each other my heart, which is just the sweetest thing. I love this book so much. I'm convinced they're already mates. Like, this is canon to me. But this does raise a few questions now going into Burn. If they are mates, they would be able to touch their mating mark and the other person would know that they're A, alive, and B, touching their mating mark, aka, oh, we're two-way mates. There are multiple times in the 3 chapters of Burn where Luther is like rubbing his chest. It doesn't say heart, it just says chest. And I think this might be a sign of like, hey, mating telephone, are you working? Are you working? So here's my theory. In the first 3 chapters of Burn, there's one moment specifically that really, in my opinion, leads like neon sign to them being mates. This is from Luther's POV. Quote, my heart seemed to have an innate sense of where it was at all times. I'd left a piece of myself at that temple. Brr, 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 and I would never be whole without her in my arms. Again, that two halves of one whole language is everywhere. So here's I'm not going to even call it a crack theory. Here's my like assumption or an idea that I have is I think that we're going to get a end of Luther POV chapter where he touches his heart and it starts to glow. And that's how he knows not only that Diem has completed the mating ritual, but he also knows that 100% Diem is alive. And then we're going to cut to a Diem POV chapter.
I could definitely see that. Separate from the mating mark, Luther also has the compass that points in the direction of his heart's greatest desire. And since Diem became trapped, it's been spinning aimlessly because the magic on the island prevents it from showing Luther what he wants most, which is Diem. He thinks as soon as she escapes, it will point him in the right direction. So no matter what, I will say I love your idea of that with like the mating mark, especially because we did get just like a tiny bit of foreshadowing. It's just like, it's important, but it's not in your face there in Heat. No matter what, I do think that this aimlessly spinning compass is foreshadowing for how he will know when she is free from the island.
I will say, as I was reading the 3 chapters, I was like, could this be the aimless spinning because she's been stabbed? And like maybe a part, not all of her died because she's not dying. Like we know that.
Right.
Like, there's no way. But maybe like a part of her died. So it's spinning because the part he's looking for, or the part that the compass is looking for, I'll say, is dead.
There is that theory that when she dies, she like loses that sense of humanity, not unlike her sire. So I personally don't believe that. And we will definitely get into DM and all of that here soon.
Oh, I'm excited. So continuing on with this mates conversation, we do know that mates get ill or their magic weakens when they are away from each other for too long, which I don't feel like that's an accident that was written. That makes me deeply concerned.
Well, with that knowledge, I will say to counter this theory that, of course, we do definitely both believe, the first 3 chapters in Luther's POV don't seem to include anything that hints towards these separation consequences, and they have been apart for 4 weeks.
There is one moment where Arlie notices that something's not right with Luther, and she's like, "Are you worried?" And he's like, "I'm not fucking worried." And she's like, "Okay, well, if you're not worried, then like, what's up? What are you feeling?" And he thinks, quote, "I kept my silence. The truth was too raw, too painful to explain." So maybe, I don't think he's ill. I don't think his magic is going away because he's practicing new magic of illusion like Alix has. So I wonder if he's feeling off. I'm not going to call it ill. I wonder if right now he's just feeling off. You know what I mean?
That's true. I guess I assumed that the truth was related to his guilt and things along those lines.
That could be it too.
Because that stood out to me as well. But that's the other thing. Like all of these have different meanings too. That could have different meanings.
Now, the last thing I'll say on this mate stuff is that mates do have access to visit other imprisoned mates. Do we think that they're either going to be able to visit each other where he'll be able to come onto the island? I don't think so because of the magic. Like they would have to change the spell. Or do you think they're going to at least try that card?
I don't think so. I don't think that the crowns would take any risks, knowing especially how powerful Luther is and how much stronger they are together and how fearful they are of that power. I also do think that the crowns wouldn't care that they're mates. Yes, to separate 2 mates is against what the kindred would want, but this is also assuming that they somehow, some way found out. Like I have no idea how that would happen, but I don't think the crowns care enough about appealing to what the kindred would want in order to then put the 2 most powerful people together who they definitely don't want together.
I think you are absolutely right. I could see them, if they do figure out that they're mates, like maybe through the glow or through like, oh my God, my chest is glowing. That means we have a 2-way mating bond. If they do figure out that they are mates, I could see them attempting this strategy. So a really cool thing about Penn's writing style is she has plotted her entire books in the W format, but she also plots every chapter in the W format. Oh. So I could see with that format, there being the tension of them finding out that they're mates separately and not telling anyone and then coming together and then like confessing to each other. Like that's just more what I see when I think of DM and Luther's characterization, but who knows? I also didn't think Luther would be an ass about hiding his Godstone wound, and yet there he was.
So if we are talking about foreshadowing for 2 mates being allowed to be together in a prison, I could see that happening later in Burn. We know it's going to be a thick book, so one of them could be separated from the other one and imprisoned, not on the island, but in the realms. And then one of them is allowed. Or I could see another mated couple, whether that is Taryn and Zelric, maybe they become mates. A crazy idea would be Teller and Lily becoming mates too, because we know that it is possible for the mortals to be mated to the kindred. So maybe mortals can't be mated to the descended. Anyway, I do think that we will see something along those lines play out with imprisonment, but it might not be Luther and Diem.
I love it. Let's move on to the speculation of what happens next for Diem on the island of Coril.
He ends on the cliffhanger of Diem being stabbed in the heart, but like her sire, who survived a Godstone stab in the heart, it's a very safe bet she will survive it too, even though the blade is made of Godstone, which is deadly to the descended. Plus, her blood is the cure to Godstone, and when she has this magical eruption right after her mortal father's death, she created Godstone. Only the kindred are supposed to be able to do that. Plus, Ambrose said at the beginning of Spark about Diem's claim that her sire is dead, quote, should be, but he's a survivor. Another trait you inherited, I'm guessing. So there you go. We also have to wonder if Diem saves Igneos, who is currently dying from the godstone that Umbros scratched him with. We can assume this because we know he survives long enough, at least a month, for Luther to confront him, as Penn told us. Where this confrontation is, we don't know, because it seems the spell has to be broken for either her to leave the island with Igneos or for Luther to step foot on the island again.
It's Diem. She's probably going to save Igneos, I swear to God.
Oh, I'm going to get into that in a minute, yes.
Okay, cool. Well, do you think that there's a side of the story where she convinces Igneos to fight for her side?
No.
Damn it.
I think he's bad to the bone and he will die soon enough. Maybe at Luther's hands.
God, I
And then
hope
his
so.
Gryvern can become Diem's too. And then his Gryvern can live happily ever after with Sarai. Now, we do have to say this, it would be very in character for Diem to save Igneos. The two of them are trapped on this island, he is slowly dying, and she is the only one with the ability to help him. Even though he definitely deserves to die, the healer in her and her good heart will have a hard time letting him die when she knows she's the only way to save him. Or Diem accidentally heals him because her blood gets on his wounded wrist. Even right when he stabs her and blood comes out. I don't think that actually happened with how the stab wound is, but blood could accidentally get on his wound and therefore she accidentally heals him.
I also would hope for this, but it is Diem. Let's be real. She's gonna heal him. She let Vance go. Not once, not twice, but 3 fucking times. Now, we do know from the first 3 chapters that the Arboros Queen has been leaving supplies on the island each week for Diem. However, they have not been touched.
That's right.
So you would think that at least Igneos would go and snatch it. He's selfish enough where he would go and do that. So it does raise the question, do you think they're still on the island? Because why would their supplies not be touched? Unless they think it's poisoned or something?
That's what I was going to say. Maybe she does think that it's poisoned, although because she doesn't have the extra context, as far as we know, she doesn't have that, although she easily could probably figure it out.
I think that if they would be off the island, the compass of Luther's would be spinning towards her. So I think they're still on the island, but it does raise the question as to why they're not touching the supplies.
I agree with you. Yes, I do think that they are on the island still, but who knows why they're not getting the supplies. At least Igneos, yeah.
It's such a mystery and I love it, but I also need this book in my hands. Let's go back to the spell that Doriel cast that is trapping her on the island. It is as follows from Doriel, quote, "With this spell, we bind Diem Bellator to this island. May she never again leave these shores." I mean, that sounds pretty freaking final. When I was going through this, for this part of the outline, I was like, maybe there's some kind of wording where it's maybe she'll never leave these shores until she dies or something like that. And then that would work around the Godstone wound. But alas, it is may she never again leave these shores. Yes, Lexi? Yes, Lexi?
I have an idea of how this works out. The Umbros Queen says back in Spark on Paradise Row, quote, "When forgotten blood on Heartstone falls, then shall the chains be broken. Life for life, old debt required, or eternal be his yoke." While I have no idea what the second sentence means, we will speculate that later. We figure out that when her blood fell on the Heartstone at the end of Glow, the magic binding her sire, which is essentially the same spell, it broke, and that is how he was able to escape. And it's somehow tied to the foraging magic. I'm not even going to get into that right now. So let's talk about the significance of Diem's blood and its implications with the Heartstone. We know that the Kindred's elemental magic is blood magic, and anyone who shares their blood inherits these abilities. But there's also a second kind, a magic of life and death that flows through everything. I'm assuming that is the foraging magic that the Descended Crowns can tap into, and Diem can to a whole other degree. So the Heartstone acts as a conduit between the Kindred's blood magic and the foraging magic. It allowed the Kindred to weave their magic into this world and control how it can be used. So this Kindred blood magic must be what makes Diem's blood so special. If her sire is actually Omnos, which we will definitely get into soon, that makes her the daughter of a Kindred, so she directly inherited this blood magic and ability to control how magic can be used. All of this to say, I believe Diem will bleed on the Heartstone again, and it will break the spell that binds her to this island. Her blood on the Heartstone helps seal her fate here along with the other crowns, but I think she alone is powerful enough to break it like she unknowingly was able to for her sire's release. And I'll throw in one other thing here, and/or maybe there's something to the 10th Kindred's carving of the 10-pointed star at the temple, which illuminated when she was crowned.
I see now why 2,000 extra words were added to the
I'm only getting started here, Nicole.
Well, okay, so now I have a new theory on how we're going to switch to Diem's POV. So I still think the mate theory and the glow and the whatnot is a possibility. But what if Luther's like about to go to sleep one night and then all of a sudden we hear a click, and that is the compass showing one direction, and then we cut to Diem's POV 4 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago or whatever.
I definitely think we will definitely get that, the 4 weeks
like
ago.
Going
there.
back in time.
Yep.
Oh my God, I love this series. All right, it's time to talk about this vision, though, that Luther and Diem have together. The vision is Diem is wearing a suit of dark, glittering black armor, probably Godstone, courtesy of Alix's project that she's working on. Diem is carrying around a gilded blade of black and gold, surrounded by a ring of corpses extending far and wide. Luther is standing across from her with a blood-soaked sword of Courbois, which is the jewel hilt that is over his shoulder, always that she makes fun of him for. He is looking at her, and he lays a palm over the left side of his chest, and Diem echoes the movement. That's their mating mark. I mean, that is it right there. Like, my God, I love it. The form of a man.
Now, while I agree with you, that is also the sign of I am with you, Queen. Like it's like a salute, so to speak.
Agreed. I think that's what we're supposed to think, and then it's actually the mating mark. Like, I think it's that what we go feral for in these types of stories, where it's like it means one thing, but it actually means another. There is a form of a man that is glowing bright as the moon. He is gray and colorless, aka this is Ophiuchi.
He tells her, the daughter of the Forgotten, to join him and end the descended rule, destroy this world, and build it anew. She hesitates and has an internal battle with herself as she continues coming to terms with being descended and with being mortal. But she will fight with everything she has to protect both people, quote, from each other and from him.
Then in this vision, she lifts her sword and silver flames rise around her. And then there's an explosion of endless white light, which sounds very similar to how she reacted after Andre, her mortal father, died. And she had that big explosion where she created Godstone, though it did not say silver flame. It was just an explosion of light. And then a voice within her, we're assuming maybe her godhood, whispers, "Now, daughter of the Forgotten, now you are ready." I love it.
I literally just got
I know,
see? This vision is definitely the cover art for Burn of the Everflame. I think we're pretty confident in that.
Oh, yeah.
The cover does keep getting more fiery with each book. We're assuming that fire is probably representative of the Everflame. Or maybe it is in reference to the silver fire she's surrounded with in this vision. I will say, though, of course, the cover is more yellow and orange flames, not a silver flame, though.
So let's talk about the silver fire, because I'm stumped. I have no idea what this is, but I'm assuming you do. I'm assuming you have an idea.
So it's not mentioned at all in either spark or heat, and silver fire or silver flames are only referred to in the vision she has in Glow. Maybe it's her full power unleashed, but I also think a lot of the dead bodies circling her feet might be from the silver flame, and Diem will have to grapple with this death and destruction she caused. Umbros said her heir will be Diem's most difficult adversary, and they will stand in the way of what she needs to do, drive a wedge between her and those she loves, and they will cost her a terrible price, possibly put her in a premature grave. I think that Umbros is saying Diem will be her own worst enemy because she has to face and even embrace her dark and deadly side, which is what the silver flame represents.
Yes, retweet. Absolutely. What you just said. Now, I will also say that Umbros mentions, like, how much are you willing to sacrifice, Diem? And Diem's like, I'm willing to sacrifice my life. And Umbros is like, that's the easy part. And the implication is that, are you willing to sacrifice the people you love? Or are you willing to sacrifice another human life or something like that? Like, Diem sacrificing herself is something she does in every chapter, almost, it feels like. So that could also be what Umbros is referring to here.
Absolutely. Then we have the weapon and how it plays a part. Remember that DM had the weapon in Sophos and she called it a true piece of art, but then she had to give it back. It had come from the archives and it used to belong to the Kindred. I don't think it said which Kindred, but what if it was Omnos's and they took it from him, and that is why DM feels called to it and why it might actually be able to kill her sire. It's a broadsword with a gilded, finely carved handle and a wide, glittering onyx blade. This blade is inlaid with golden scroll work, almost like words, but not in any language DM recognizes.
We know that the Kindred came from a different world. What if this is the home world language of the Kindred? Or of the Everflame. It could be of them too, but assuming because it's a sword of the Kindred, I would assume it's like the home world. There's also mention of a glassy disc in the center. I have no idea what this means, but I'm excited to find out.
Well, and then when DM takes a broadsword, its energy warms her skin and the blade pulses with a soft silvery glow. Maybe as an apology, Sophos will give the sword back to her. She does need some way to get it back. Because yes, I do think that this sword will be one of the only things, maybe the only thing that can defeat her sire, since it comes from the Kindred and calls to DM.
Or another option is Teller could steal it from Sophos. Now, Teller is not currently in Sophos, and I would assume actually he's probably not welcome back, considering that he was under Doriel's guard and clutches and, you know, like golden chains, all that kind of stuff that DM said at the end. But then he ran off with Luther and he's now with the Guardian. So probably not. But I mean, Teller also does have the strongest connection to Sophos. So maybe.
Ultimately, I believe that this vision is the final battle. Good versus evil, restoring the balance of the Kindred and the Everflame, and it's going to be ugly on all sides. The world will seem like it is burning, hence the name of this book. But when the world goes to ash, what comes of it? The Phoenix rises, better and stronger than before, the symbol of House Courbois.
I'm literally having an out-of-body experience right now. Like, this is so good. Now,
and as we've already been doing this episode, I already came across all this other stuff that we didn't even mention in this. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, like, I just need 5 more episodes of this. Anyway.
Now, we've already alluded to this, but let's fully dive into it now. Why are DM and her biological father, Ophiuchi, so freaking powerful? We need to start with the elephant in the room. Is Ophiuchi Omnos?
I lean towards yes. Mini history lesson coming in hot. So Omnos was the 10th and youngest of the Kindred siblings who had a crown and realm of his own between Sophos and Montios, now known as the Forgotten Lands. But according to, I'll say semi-lost history, he died a few years after the original foraging. As the Sophos crown says, quote, there are references to the Kindred making a great personal sacrifice to protect the mortals after the foraging. The details were lost to history, but over the years, some Sophos crowns speculated that sacrifice was Omnos. He was the only Kindred who didn't take a mate, so he never gave up his immortality like the others. They also did not believe that he had offspring either. His Kindred siblings were scared of him since he could live forever, unlike them now, and was immune to magic and could steal their magic. Which, quick pause, because I was initially confused about this steal their magic concept. But you know what om/omni in Latin means? And Latin is the basis for all of these Kindred realms. Om means everything, and omni means all. So what if the youngest brother's power was all of his 9 siblings' powers? Maybe he obtained their powers by actually stealing from his siblings, or maybe he was just innately the most powerful of them all, and they wanted to have the narrative be that he stole their powers. Whatever the case is, he was apparently the Kindred's sacrifice. Plus, here's a note about Omnos from Montios' diary entry for extra context. Quote, there is a plan, but our youngest will not agree. Our lives are shorter now. We must persuade him before our time expires. I confess, some days I fear him. What happened in our homeland did not scare him as it should have. Instead, he speaks of it with reverence. And of course, the youngest that Montios is speaking of is Omnios. So quick side thought, is the key bit of info about the Kindred Curse we don't know yet in relation to their homeland. Like, will Diem learn of this when she takes the Rosebane, which gives her the ability to talk directly to the gods? Anyway, after sacrificing Omnos, all memory of him was wiped from the history books, but his Gryvern was able to escape and go into hiding, which, yes, this is the Gryvern that Ophiuchi has. So now we've walked through Omnos' past. Let's look at Ophiuchi, who is Omnos' apparent offspring, and how he ended up imprisoned on the island. There is only one clue to this answer, a map of the island marking the hidden door with a note that it should never be opened for any reason, dated just after the Blood War. Sophos thinks that maybe the crowns at the time feared Ophiuchi and he would be too powerful, so they lured him to the island where he would have no magic, and there is where they imprisoned him in hopes that Omnos' line would die with him. And you know who was around during the Blood War? The Umbros Queen. That's why she has answers. She might have been one of the ones who literally wrote that warning note. Montios King, who was also alive during the Blood War and was much older than Umbros Queen, left a message from his kindred ancestor for his heir, but it doesn't seem to provide any hints besides, quote, beware my brother's wrath. And then I'm going off script here because I literally saw this while we were doing this episode. The Umbros Queen says, quote, the kindred have no mortal blood. Their bodies perish, but they endure. And then Diem asks, like, so they just can't die? And then the Umbros Queen is like, oh, their kind can die, but the Blessed Father kept that detail all to himself.
So what if that's the piece of information we don't know, is how the kindred can die? And I'm assuming that has to deal with something where it's like the 11 must fall for one to rise. That prophecy.
Yes. We will definitely be getting into that too, because I don't actually think that it's the people. I think that it's the realms.
I think so too, actually.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, so with the facts laid out, time to jump into theory land about why Ophiuchi is actually Omnos. What if Omnos was already imprisoned on the island because his siblings couldn't kill him, and this note on the hidden door was some kind of reminder / warning not to let him out? So instead of this note indicating the start of his imprisonment, as Sophos believes, it could actually be a continuation of it. And of course, we know that there are only two from Omnos' line that we know of, and that's why Diem and her sire are considered so powerful. But Omnos and Ophiuchi match descriptions so well that I wonder if this history of Omnos dying isn't entirely accurate, and the Umbros Queen knew it.
Interesting. I do want to shift our discussion to what this means for Diem if Omnos is Ophiuchi, being a daughter of a full-blooded kindred. We know from Alexis's project that she is researching that raw, unmolded godstone that Diem created can only be created by the kindred. So that's that honestly right there. If there was nothing else in this entire series, that line right there would be like, okay, so Diem is at least part kindred.
Well, and then we have to look at eye color, of course. Because only the kindred, all 9 or 10 of the kindred had gray eyes. Yep. And of course, Ophiuchi and Diem both have gray eyes. The kindred passed specifically colored eyes down to their offspring, which they had with their mortal mates. And that's how we have the descended with the unique colored eyes based on their realm and who their kindred was. Ophiuchi with the gray kindred eyes and mortal orally have Diem, who has brown mortal eyes like her mother's until her magic comes in, and then it turns to the kindred color of gray. So this actually does mean one of two things. It either means Omnos and a mortal had Ophiuchi, but Omnos did not pass down a special eye color to his descended son, so that's why Ophiuchi's eyes are gray, and therefore Diem's are as well. Or Ophiuchi is Omnos, and as a kindred, he did not give his daughter Diem a different eye color like all the others. I assume because he did not believe in the other kindred's agreed upon plan for the world, as Montios' diary noted.
Well, and going back to only a kindred can create Godstone. Diem created Godstone. If Omnos had a child with a mortal and that was Ophiuchi, that means that Ophiuchi's blood is already descended, not kindred. Now, correct. Because Ophiuchi and Arlie had Diem, that does mean that she, meaning she, Arlie, is a mortal. We'll get into that in a moment, though. So it does mean that no matter what, Diem's blood is not full-blooded kindred, but she would be at least part full-blooded kindred.
Moving on from the Grey Eyes and back to Ophiuchi and Diem's power. Ophiuchi is able to pull Diem's crowns out from where she hides them with the foraging magic. So it's almost like he has this ultimate power and control over the foraging magic.
Which only kindred can do, right?
Well, again, it goes back into, yes, that was part of the kindred's second magic that we had talked about earlier. And the descended do have that tied to their specific realm's foraging magic. So again, I think it's like that heightened power, that heightened connection, because he is an actual kindred.
Yes.
Or the son of a kindred.
Yes.
Ophiuchi could also reach through the foraging magic in the Forgotten Lands and physically grab, mark, and throw Diem out. Now, I do think that might be because the Forgotten Lands was his space, so it was an amplified foraging magic there. But I have to wonder, can he do that in any of the 9 realms? Or could she do that in any of the 9 realms as well?
Only time will tell, but I hope so.
I'm not sure how, but I think this unique ability with the foraging magic is related to how Diem is connected to all of the kindred versus just the one like the kindred's offspring, aka the descended. To be honest, the foraging magic still kind of confuses me, and I have to wonder if that's on purpose for us readers, where there is missing central information about the foraging magic that ties into the Kindred Curse.
Yeah, agreed. So all in all, we both believe that Omnos is a Ophiuchi, which means that Diem is a direct descendant from a kindred, making her extra powerful. But we have to ask ourselves, this series, yes, it's called the Kindred's Curse, but every single book is blank of the Everflame. So let's talk about how Everflame and the old gods tie into our story.
The sacred Everflame was considered the tree of life and death, and its leaves were made of flame. It was considered the undying fire. This Everflame tree was located on the island where the Kindred Curse temple is now, and the Kindred cut it down. This is, of course, also the island where Ophiuchi was imprisoned, and this is where Orally met him and had Diem. More on that in a second. According to the old mortal religion, all life began as sparks from the Everflame that fell to the earth as glowing seeds. The old gods once plucked flames from its branches and gave them as blessings.
We need to talk about Orally's connection to the Everflame, because in almost every depiction of the Everflame, like in paintings and sophos, there is a man painted with the Everflame, but the details of his face are hidden or faded. But notably, he has vibrant red hair that is very similar, almost identical to Orally's, which in Spark, it's mentioned in that first chapter before she goes missing, that her hair color is super unique. Luther says in Heat, while looking at this red hair man depicted with the Everflame, quote, "With that hair, he must be related to your mother." So is Orally a descendant from the old gods, aka specifically the Everflame?
Well, so yes, I do think she is absolutely tied to this red-haired man, but first we have to wonder who this Everflame man is. Before the Kindred, ancient mortals were great chiefs and monarchs or beloved figures. So could he be someone who is a prominent figure or symbol of the ancient mortals, and because of the mortals' worship of the Everflame and old gods, that is why he is depicted next to the Everflame? Or, and I think this is the more likely answer, is this red-haired man a depiction of an old god who is next to his Everflame tree, and he is one of those old gods who would pick the leaves off and offer them as blessings? Orally collected outlawed old mortal books with many references to the Everflame and the old gods. Did she hold on to these books for reasons beyond just secretly clinging to the ancient faith? Like because she is personally connected to the Everflame and the old gods, and it's a lot more meaningful for her in particular? I do think so, but I also think the answer is more complex than maybe her, I'll say, just being a descendant of the old gods. And I don't mean that in any kind of bad way, but just like I think it is a little bit more complex than that. The red hair and all of the mystery surrounding Orally, there's something there with the old gods and the Everflame, hands down.
So in addition to Diem having a part of this would also mean Teller would be a descendant of some sort from the Everflame or Everflame adjacent, whatever that means. So maybe this means that Teller and Orly will have longer lives, and then Teller and Lily can be together for longer. I really hope so.
I don't mean to burst your bubble, but Orly is definitely showing signs of aging, and she's in like her 40s or something.
We
so
don't
I don't know
how old she is, though. Like, we don't have an age attached to her.
I suppose that is true.
Let me have my hope.
Okay.
I need Teller and Lily to not have a short relationship. That would kill me. Now, if her mother was from the old gods, this would absolutely explain why DM had that reaction when she touched the Everflame in the Sophos library.
Well, her mother being a descendant aside, or maybe it amplifies it. Are you ready to have your mind blown?
Lexi, I am so ready to have my mind blown.
I was reading this line and it made my jaw drop. So from Heat, chapter 35, as DM is in Umbrose's library and looking through stories of the Everflame, quote, pregnant mothers would risk their lives to travel the sea once labor began, believing a child born on the Everflame's blessed soil would be imbued with its sacred power of life. Yeah.
And Coriel is where that is, yes?
Yes, that is exactly where it is. So DM was literally born on the island where the Everflame used to be, because again, remember, it was taken down by the Kindred. And so she is literally a child born on the Everflame's blessed soil. So is that why she has the Everflame power of life, and that's why it reacts the way that it does when she touches it? Is this why she is the one destined to bring balance between the Everflame and the Kindred?
Because she literally is the balance. She is both of them.
Yes.
But then why is it that Arlie's hair matches this dude of the Everflame?
I think that it could be like one big thing of destiny playing into it, where it is his descendant found herself on this soil to give birth to a child. Because remember, that was definitely not part of her mission. And it was like all of the pieces fell into place. The descendant of this Everflame man ended up having a child born on the soil with a kindred.
Oh my God.
And then now we're in this situation that everybody was like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. Like, they've been waiting for DM. Even on the foraging day before, like on the first page of Spark, there was a blood moon. And so it was like calling that things were about to change in this world.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Okay. So a few rapid fire questions. Do you think that this is the reason the Heartstone cracked when her blood was spilled on it? Because she has both sides of the magic? Or do you think it's solely because of the kindred blood?
I do think that's mostly because of the kindred blood, because she has the 10th kindred's blood, and that was not part of, I'll say, the spell that was supposed to be in place. And so that like really threw things off. However, I do think that her being, I'll say, a daughter of the Everflame, for lack of a better word, I think that that is almost like her tether for the mortals and her representing the mortals, and then her connection to the kindred and that deeper connection with the foraging magic and such. And that is why she is so connected to the descended. And that is why she is ultimately the one to bring these two peoples together to restore balance.
Okay, well, my head is absolutely freaking out and spinning, and I will be thinking about that at 2 a.m. Thank you very much.
I was literally just like, like parsing through, like, and I was using like my ebook, like searches and stuff like that. And I like read this sentence and I was like,
this is why you are the archive surreal girl. Like, this is why you are the person. Oh my God, you are so smart. Okay, so now let us move into some prophecies. We've alluded to these prophecies a lot throughout our episode so far, but let's dive head first deep into them and parse through every single line of these prophecies. First, let's start with the Umbrose prophecy from chapter 1 of Spark of the Everflame. Quote, when forgotten blood on Heartstone falls, then shall the chains be broke. Life for life, old debt requires, or eternal be his yoke. Line number 1, forgotten blood on Heartstone falls, then his chain shall be broke. This is, Lexi already had talked about this, but this is how DM's blood, at the end of Glow, when she pours her blood on the Heartstone, she's a daughter of the Forgotten, her blood goes on the Testament. But let's talk about the second part. Life for a life, old debt requires, or eternal be his yoke. That sounds a lot like sacrifice or else Ophiuchi will rain down on them forever. Do you think that DM getting stabbed by Igneos counts as the sacrifice?
No.
Or or you think she'll have to sacrifice herself or sacrifice others in order to kill Ophiuchi? Like going back to Umbrose's, how far are you willing to go? There's a lot of DM might die language, or people might die, I'll even say, because back in the prologue of book 1, it says, quote, "If I had the courage to step forward into that dark alley that day and hear the words that the handsome scarred-bearing stranger whispered into my mother's ear, perhaps one of us, or all of us, might have died a great deal sooner." So there's two ways I could take this, is if I had the courage to step forward that day and learned all the truth a lot sooner, then people would have died sooner, which I'm taking as, since she didn't, and since things are playing out the way that they're playing out in our story, people are dying later, which maybe means way later because they have long, long kindred lives.
I will say this. I do not think that her mother is coming out of this alive. Ooh, what if the Everflame man was the one who was sacrificed for the kindred, and the mother, I hate saying this, but what if Orly is going to be the sacrifice? And that is why the Umbros Queen is so concerned for DM, because DM sacrificing herself, I don't want to say like that's not the concern, because she would do that in a heartbeat, but it's her having to sacrifice a loved one.
Yeah, and I think there's 3 major options: Teller, her mother, or Luther. Because this is romantasy, I don't see Luther dying and them not being together at the end of the book. God, I hope so. That would kill me. I love Luther. So that was Umbrose's prophecy from book 1. So life for a life, basically, we know that there's going to be some kind of sacrifice. Let's talk about Ulther's prophecy, aka it's actually the female voice that's talking through him on his deathbed. Quote, "Give him our gift, daughter of the forgotten. And when the end has come and the blood has been spilt, give our gift to my faithful heir and tell him this is my command." Take it away, Lex.
I believe the gift he is referring to is the kindred's magical gifts, because the kindred Montios in the diary entry said they share their gifts with the local mortals. Same gift language to describe their powers. So can this be that DM must share her all-powerful gift to give it up, like, say, in a bonded bargain, to pay the cost of curing the Kindred Curse? Or could it be DM sacrificing her magical abilities and giving them to Luther? I have such a hard time believing DM will die, but you are right about some of this language. So maybe she does sacrifice herself, but then because of her Everflame power of life, she can come back in a way that's different from being kindred.
I think you're onto something. We have some context, but we're missing some really key elements. I think we're both in agreement, though, that the give him our gift is like the faithful heir. I'm assuming that's Luther, given not only the fact that pronouns are there, he, but faithful heir. Luther is the most devout of all people. So I'm assuming that it's definitely, no matter what, the he is Luther.
Yes. So moving away from prophecies here, I do want to just kind of throw something out about the Kindred Curse, because there are so many possibilities here. Was Omnos the one who put this curse on his siblings? Or were his siblings sacrificing him, whether through death or imprisonment? What caused the Kindred Curse? Because the foraging magic will never be right as long as a piece of him lives in this world.
I like both of those options.
Because I do think that the Kindred Curse is something that has been in existence for a long time, because there is something wrong with the foraging magic. It has never been fully right because there is a 10th kindred still around. And so it's been messing with the foraging magic, and they've essentially been able to keep it in line until DM comes into her own. So,
well, then that brings into the question as to why does Luther right now still have magic, even though they are not in Lumnos? But he's able to use his magic, even though the foraging spell has been recast at the end of Heat.
I think because now they're still missing...
They're missing Ophiuchi's blood on the foraging magic.
No, they're not, because she represents that.
But she's not the queen of Omnos. That would be Ophiuchi.
Oh, you're right.
So I think because they don't have all 10, they're not able to fully cast the foraging spell.
Well, and then I do think that essentially it goes back to the prophecy about 11 must fall so one can rise. I think that directly ties into the Kindred Curse and solving it.
Let's talk about that because that's next on the outline. So in the note that the previous king of Montios left for his heir, aka Diem, his message includes a note or a prophecy, I'll say, from Montios herself, speaking through him. Quote, 11 must fall for one to rise. Share the gift to pay the cost. A dying star will rekindle the spark. What is forgotten is not lost. Remember my sister's words. Beware my brother's wrath. Okay, line by line, let's break this down. 11 must fall for one to rise. This keeps me up at night because if it was 10 must fall for one to rise, that would be obvious. We know of 10. We know the 9 crowns, the 10th forgotten, yada, yada. I'm guessing this is the big piece of info that we do not know that Penn was alluding to in the interview. It's what the 11th is.
I respectfully disagree because I think that it is the 11 referring to the realms. And there we do already know because the 9 known realms plus the forgotten lands plus the island equals 11. They all must fall so one combined realm can rise. And guess who is getting the powers of all of those realms? Diem.
Okay, a counter offer. Instead of the 11th being Kirill, what if the 11th is the representation of the Everflame? So it's not, so instead of it being land, it's power. 11 powers must fall. So then that would be Arlie, technically.
Yeah, and that way it would be.
Now, another option is this 11th Diem? Going back to that sacrifice. In the note, it also mentions, quote, this is from the Montios king himself. I am at peace with the sacrifice I must make. I pray you find the same peace with yours. His sacrifice is dying.
And then Umbrosa Queen had the same language too,
Yes.
with I am sacrificing what is most dear to me.
So I think that Diem is dying. I don't think she's going to stay dead. I think she'll come back to life somehow, some way. But also that doesn't make sense with what Umbro said earlier.
Yeah. I'm telling you, it's the realms.
Okay, so you think that the 11 realms are the 10 realms, including the Forgotten Lands of Omnos, and the island of Kirill. Because, well, the island of Kirill is technically a representation of the Everflame. So it's actually, we're both right.
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm trying to say.
Right. Give me an extra second. There's so much lore here. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. Share the gift to pay the cost. This is very similar to what Ulthar said in his, Lumnos speaking through him with give him our gift. Again, going back to assuming this is Luthor.
I definitely think that it is talking about Luthor, yes.
Yeah. Well, and especially because it says, when the end has come and the blood has been spilt, give my gift to my faithful heir. Again, it's that faithful language that really is just blaring neon sign that this is Luthor. But what is the gift? I don't know. Let's go to the next line. A dying star will rekindle the spark. I'm assuming this is the 10-pointed star that is the sign of Ophiuchi, aka Omnos. Is this a hint that the 10-pointed star will rekindle the spark of the revolution? Basically hinting at Ophiuchi's rise. Yes, Lexi, go for it.
Or his fall, and that will rekindle the spark of the Everflame. Remember back in the lore with how everything started, it was a spark of literally a flame, and that contributes there to the Everflame. Ophiuchi being alive causes the foraging magic to not be completely successful. We know that. But by his death, the right order will come back. The Kindred Curse, maybe that's what that is. It will cease, and the Everflame will burn again, restoring balance to the world.
The chills that just shot up my body. That's so good. Now, I will say, because it says the death, a dying star will rekindle the spark. Diem does have this star on her chest. So again, going back to that sacrifice language, it could, like Umbro says, prophecies tend to have multiple meanings. So it could also mean Diem sacrificing herself or Diem killing Ophiuchi. He has a star on his body, whatever. What is forgotten is not lost. This feels pretty self-explanatory. It's obviously. Remember my sister's words. This is Lumnos talking through Ulthar. This is Montio saying, hey, remember what Lumnos said a while ago. And then beware my brother's wrath, a.k.a. Ophiuchi, Omnos, assuming they're the same person.
Yes. Or even if they're not the same person, Ophiuchi represents Omnos.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
Okay.
I'm sweating.
So with all of that said, let's shift gears here a little bit because we do still have the big mystery of who killed Andre, Diem's mortal adopted father. Like we mentioned, Penn told us the answer is obvious and it is in Glow. I'm getting Rebecca Yarrow's Violet. I'm not going to give spoilers right now. But you all know you know.
Oh my God.
The answer is obvious in Iron Flame. And then the fandom goes feral. Okay, anyway. But I will say there is a possibly important realization from Heat that offers perspective on who the killer could be if it's not a clear answer. Diem recognized the crown of Sophos, Doriel's dagger, as similar to the one that killed her dad. Doriel says that it was a coronation gift from Ulthar, the previous king of Lumnos. And then more potential evidence from Glow is when Diem sees Andre dead and she observes there's tissue under his nails showing signs of a struggle, and his face is frozen forever in a mask of disbelief. So let's walk through the suspects, shall we? And these are in no particular order. So suspect number 1 is the Guardians, or specifically Breck or Vance. Sealy Queen from our Discord, shouts to you, and she's also on Instagram, put together a fantastic theory that Breck killed Andre. Since there was that tissue under her father's nails, that could mean the killer was mortal. And we know that Breck and Andre knew each other, hence why her father could have been surprised that this was his attacker. Breck was the one that delivered her father's army acceptance, so he knows where the Bellators live. Breck is also a bladesmith and delivers finely made weapons to Lumnos. Remember, though, he resides in Fortos. So he easily could have access to this descended weapon and come to Lumnos with it. We also know Breck lied to Diem about how he knew her mother. They did not actually meet in the army, but rather because they're both guardians. I assume that. But the point is that he lied to her. So he's not as good as we thought he was. But what about the worst guardian of all? Vance.
Fucking Vance.
God fucking damn it, Vance. I hate you so much. Diem associates the murder weapon with House Bennett, since they managed the weapons in Lumnos and it was their armory that the Guardians raided and burned. So the Guardians could have stolen this weapon from the armory in Book 1, and that's how Vance got a hold of this descended weapon. The Guardians, especially Vance, were mad at Diem for being a traitor, and simultaneously they were relying on her as their inside source. Whether it was Breck or Vance, this could have been a simultaneous FU and ensure Diem fully commits to the Guardians, turning against the Descended, since the Guardians are framing her father's death as the work of the Descended. Some of these Guardians, including these two men, feel her father is a traitor to the mortals as well, since the armies he led were under the Descended rule.
Let's not forget that in Spark, Henry mentions, like, I'm paraphrasing, but he was like, Diem, you're pretty sheltered, like, given your father's position. And so it definitely feels like there's some animosity towards him, but also Vance is not a fan of Aurelie, so this would also be a huge fuck you to Aurelie, especially given that she's away on a mission and there's no way, quote unquote, of her finding out that it was Vance and / Breck.
While we're talking about the Guardians, we do have to throw out Henry. I don't think it was Henry. That would be completely non-redeemable. And he is one of Penn Cole's favorite characters because she feels he is misunderstood. But one of the other Guardians like Breck or Vance really is my top suspect. And that will be a big turning point for Henry because they are attacking their own versus the Descended who Henry wants to go after.
Well, also for Aurelie, like if she's the leader of the Guardians and if she finds out that one of her own brothers of the Guardians was killing her husband, like absolutely. I think that...
Well, she's also still already cut ties essentially with Vance because Vance has gone completely crazy and he's going off with Ophiuchi. Yeah.
True. I will say that if it is the Guardians, I absolutely believe that it'll be a Guardian that we know.
Yes, I agree. I do think that no matter who it is someone that we know.
Absolutely.
All right, let's move on. So if it's not a mortal, who could it be? Suspect number 2 is House Corbois. Continuing off the knowledge that this similar dagger came from the Lumnos crown, one of the bad guy Corbois could have killed Andre as they vie for control of the throne and, of course, want to weaken Diem. It could have been Remus or Gareth, neither of whom like mortals or Diem. Gareth, in particular, is very prejudiced against the mortals. He openly was disgusted with Andre's advisor appointment and then taunted Diem after her father died. He is also known to call Diem a half-breed, which was one of the insults written on the wall at the murder scene. But who else likes to use these bad words? Aemon. Gareth's oldest son. On separate occasions, he uses the phrases rebel scum and half-breed. The only phrase he doesn't say from the murder scene is mortal lover. So he says the other two. Also, I think Aemon is a snake and an all-around bad guy. DM kept giving him chances and chances and thinking that there's someone good underneath, but perhaps he leaned on that facade as he murdered her father behind her back. Aemon is my other top suspect. He feels like he would be evil, hiding in plain sight, and therefore going along with Penn's idea that this is obvious.
I think the words right there, oof, that is a pretty neon sign. I think that if it is anyone in House Corbois, I would absolutely lean towards Aemon.
I do too.
Yeah.
And maybe he and his father are working together. Gareth is another top suspect too. So maybe it is both of them there.
Well, and also that would explain why it looks exactly like or is a blade from Ulther's possession. So like it isn't a House Corbois blade.
It was a very similar one. The hilts were made of different material. So it was not the exact same blade, but everything else was identical with the design.
Ooh, all right. Aemon, actually, I think you might be going up to number 1.
All right, but hey, we got 2 more here. So suspect number 3 is House Bennett. Again, we can assume this exact type of dagger comes directly from House Bennett since it did come from Lumnos. And the Sophos representatives were staying with House Bennett, which could be relevant or it could not be. This is DM's top contender for her father's death, which just by that alone, I'm going to guess that it is not House Bennett. But anyway, House Bennett stands to profit the most from a war because people will buy more weapons from them. So this guy is all about escalating war. And he hates DM because she is sympathetic to the mortals. And he especially hates the Guardians. Quote, I want every Guardian found and executed publicly, gruesomely. And then I want their families imprisoned to show the rest of them what happens if they cross us again. Oh dear, that definitely puts you on the suspect list.
Oh dear.
House Bennett.
But I think that because that is so obvious, like I know Penn said it's obvious, but knowing Penn's writing style, I don't think it's this style of obvious. I think this is where we're supposed to be looking at as readers, and then it's going to come up behind us.
I agree. Yep. And finally, we have suspect number 4, House Hennever, like Jean. Fucking Jean. House Hennever is the most anti-mortal of the houses in Lumnos and is the most against DM. So it would make sense for them to hurt her by killing her mortal father.
I'll also throw out, what's Luther's ex's name? What Ileana. I could see it also if it is like Jean, like Ileana. But same reason House Bennett, if that feels too obvious. So okay, what is your ranking between these 4? Like who's top and who's bottom of your suspect list?
My top contender is the Guardians, and I do lean more towards Breck. Sealy Queen had such a great theory with that.
We'll link it in the show notes, by the way, the post that Sealy Queen did, 'cause it's so good.
And if it is not the Guardians, specifically Breck or Vance, then I would definitely think it was Aemon.
Okay. I'm going to go, I think Aemon, Vance, Breck is my list. But I mean, like, it could truly be any of them. The wording that Aemon uses sold me, like, because of that wording is so not even so similar. It's the same. It just
that's what really put him in my top 3 as well.
Yeah.
Like he.
Are we making a bet? Do we want to do our?
No, I can't because now I'm re-wondering. Okay, I'm going.
But also the tissue under the nails. That's really fucking with me, because if it is tissue under the nails, then it has to be immortal.
I don't think it necessarily has to be immortal. I think that Descended, they definitely are tougher, but maybe there is some way. I don't know.
That's true.
All right.
Let's round this out with, remember when we were like, this will be an hour? Like,
I hold on. You said that. I did not.
that was before someone added 2,000 more words to the list.
I have been going crazy with this outline and I'm not done yet.
Let us go into some rapid-ish, I can't even say rapid fire, rapid-ish fire thoughts that we have on theories for this book.
You might have noticed that we haven't really talked about Henry. So let's briefly discuss what we predict for him.
Is it terrible to hope that I really hope he's the sacrifice and that he dies? No, I don't think that that's going to happen. I could see in this world where he would kill Vance or a member of the Guardians, like specifically the Ophiuchi. I don't think he's going to join Ophiuchi's army by any means because of how much of a fan Penn Cole is of him. I absolutely think we're on some kind of redemption arc for him, but like a friendship redemption arc. I think that him and Diem are going to end this series in really good terms. There's the wedding. He and Lana could be the wedding that is going to happen. We're going to talk about that in a second. But no matter what, I think he's going to end on a high note. Does that make me happy? Is he my favorite character? No, but I know how Penn is a really big fan of him. And so because of that, I do believe that he's going to have some kind of redeeming arc in Burn.
I'm absolutely with you. If he has a redemption arc, which I don't know if I'll say that he and Diem are like on very good terms, even platonically, of course, by the end, but I could see them being amicable towards each other. They have forgiven one another and then they go their separate ways. I think he has to do something really big, and killing Vance is like facing the embodiment of his own inner anger and embracing the good person he is deep down.
I love that.
Very, very deep down.
I agree,
I do think that he will be the one to kill Vance.
I think you are right. I think that would be the most satisfying ending for Vance, no matter how much I want Diem to finally kill him. But I do think that one of the reasons Vance is still being kept alive is so that Henry can kill him. I will say we do also know that eventually there are going to be some bonus scenes from specifically Glow. And one of the bonus scenes is Luther confronting Henry in the dungeons when he's locked away at the ball and all that kind of stuff. So like, I really hope we get some Luther POV Henry scenes. Like,
oh
that would be delicious. I love that.
It's like another bonus scene with a POV of the MMC and like what he spews at the childhood best friend. It's like, oh gosh, so like she's kissing her cousin. Oh man,
I love it.
So funny.
So good.
All right, moving on. We know that we have 3 POVs from Penn. She told us that. So we know for sure that one is Luther. Another one we can absolutely assume is Diem. Who is the third one?
Ophiuchi? Maybe. I do think it's safe to say it's not going to be Henry. I don't think it's going to be Eleanor or Alix. I don't think it's going to be Orly, but I'm kind of going back and forth on that one. Maybe Teller or Taryn.
I actually definitely think it will be Orly because we do get her POV in both Spark and Glow's epilogues. And she's so mysterious. Her POV could be the key to what we need to know about the old gods if she is indeed connected to them.
Now, I will say Arlie's POVs in Glow and Spark are third-person POVs. So we could be switching to first person, but given that we know Luther is in first person, Diem, we are highly assuming it's going to follow the same pattern it has in Spark and Glow and Heat, and it's going to be first person. So I would assume that the third-person POV would also be first person, but maybe not.
Maybe not.
I don't know. Let's move on to Umbros, because the Queen of Umbros says at the very end of Heat to take Rosebane. What is up with that? Besides Umbros, the Umbros Queen mentioning it at the end of Heat, it is only mentioned one other time very early in Spark of the Everflame. This is how you know an author has plotted out an entire book. Like, this is delicious. I love this shit. When Diem is taunting Teller about liking Lily, she says, quote, "Do I need to hunt Lily down and threaten to slip Rosebane into her morning tea if she breaks my little brother's heart?" And then when Teller says, "Please don't kill a member of the royal family, Diem," Diem says, quote, "I didn't say kill her. In the right dose, Rosebane just makes you a teeny tiny bit temporarily insane."
And then it goes on to say it used to be called God's Horn because those who survive it claim they can talk directly to the gods.
So what if one of the POVs is actually a god? Like, it could be, but I mean, Diem is absolutely going to take this and talk to all of the kindred.
So this is probably a crack theory, but I've wondered how the Umbros Queen seems to be able to see the future. She knows way more than even her Umbros mind control / mind reading should give. Like, that's an assumption. She straight up knows the future. She has these prophecies and such. What if Rosebane helps one see the future, see prophecies that are given to them by these gods? And like I said earlier, I think when Diem takes the Rosebane and talks directly to the gods, she will learn what happened in their homeland and why Omnos felt differently than his siblings.
And maybe they'll be able to translate what's on the sword, and maybe there's something on the sword.
Yes. Or remember that the area of the library in Umbros where that DM has the key to, that she also said that is literally where all of the kindred origin stuff is. So what if the language that she needs is in there, and then that is how she's able to translate?
What if that's the information we're missing? What if that is some key to the prophecy? Maybe. I think that there's a lot more than just one piece of the puzzle.
I was going to say, there's one, the piece of information we're referring to is one critical piece of information about the Kindred Curse that essentially makes any of our theories just completely crap theories because we do not have essential information. That is literally what Penn told us. So I do think that this language, it might, I don't know if it will be like groundbreaking information, but I do think that it will be extra context to the overall story.
I hope that Taking Rosebane is in like part 1 of the book because, oh my God.
Well, and then so let's keep talking here about this key. So remember that the Umbros Queen said right before her death to use the key to her exclusive section of the library where all of these original contents from the Kindred themselves lives. This is where the original map of the territories was sketched by the Kindred, and there's all like these erase marks there as they're like mapping it all out. I love that. There's also Kindred biographies by the earliest descended, so maybe we could learn more about how powerful these earliest descended were and like before the blood was all diluted there. This is also where DM reads Kindred Montios's diary entry that speaks of his youngest brother and references something happening in their homeland. Maybe there's something to that. Before allowing DM access to the library, Umbros Queen tells her, quote, "And don't forget why they banned these books for mortals in the first place." So maybe she learns very vital information about the Kindred Curse, and Omnos from this library. Because again, as Umbros says, quote, "An education is the most powerful weapon of them all."
Well, and she also has Sophos magic. So she has all the books that she read in the Sophos library stored in her mind. So she'll be able to cross-reference anything that she learned in Sophos. Because I'm assuming we're not going back to Sophos unless it's bad things, because Doriel sucks.
Well, we also got a sword. Well, actually, I'm actually going to argue that Doriel, yes, they do suck in the sense of the decisions that they made and how they, backstabbed her. But Doriel also was very, I'll say, apologetic and was like, true. I am doing this for the best of my realm. And DM actually understood them in that way. So I think that ultimately Doriel is not going to be a bad crown as like Igneos, for instance.
No. I don't think they're anywhere near Igneos. I do think that they've shattered my trust. And
that is a good way of saying it.
But
yes.
I do think that because DM is the Queen of Umbros now, I think one of the first places we're going to go after her and Luther meet up is Umbros.
Well, Umbros is also in a really bad shape right now because Ophiuchi and his armies went through and essentially destroyed the area.
No matter what, we know that the library is either untouched or still okay because the Queen of Umbros was like, go to the library or use the key.
Yes.
Let's talk about this wedding that is going to be in Bern. Penn said, and this is from our book club, she said, quote, "It's not who we would think it is." So I'm assuming from that, it's not going to be DM and Luther's wedding. So my number one assumption then is Taryn and Zelaric. But she also mentioned that good and bad things happen. I have a bit of a sad theory, and I don't like this. It's just a theory. I don't know if I believe it yet. In Glow, when DM is talking to Taryn and Eleanor at the funeral about mates, Eleanor mentioned how there is such a thing as stranded mates, when the two lovers perform the mating bond and only one completes it, meaning only one person commits themselves fully and unconditionally, and the other does not have that full and unconditional love for the other person. This would absolutely break my heart if this happened to Taryn, and I would assume it would be Taryn completing it because he is such a hopeless romantic and Zelaric not completing it, or plot twist, Zelaric does complete it because, we're led to believe that he's such a selfish person and he does complete it, but Taryn, who's this like super hopeless romantic, plot twist, he does not complete it. But I'm not saying I like it. I want Taryn to be happy.
I do agree that I think that the wedding will be Taryn and Zelaric, but I do think that the mating bond will be accepted by both because that is a very sad theory. I do think that there will be like a stranded mates in our story. I could definitely see that. But I do have that other possibility that we mentioned earlier, Henry and Lana. This would definitely lead to good and bad things happening at a wedding. And we know that Penn loves Henry, so maybe that's why she loved writing this scene so much.
Okay, rapid fire, at least as rapid fire as we can. Luther's heart and why it's protected. I've got a few ideas here. And number one is that Luther and Diem were destined to be mates, written in the stars. If their mating mark is over the spot of his heart, then Lumnos saved that patch of skin for their mating mark and made it so that Luther cannot be struck there because it's spoken for in the stars by Diem.
So I always understood his heart being protected as Lumnos protecting him because he is meant for greater things and he is her disciple. He is central to the salvation of this world, and she has placed her own protection over his heart to ensure he survives to see his/her mission through.
Okay. So in that similar vein, then, I do believe that and I cannot believe I'm opening up this can of worms in the rapid fire section, but there's got to be a connection between Luther's patch of unmarked skin, or at least before he sliced it open with the apple knife, unmarked skin over his heart, his devotion to Lumnos, and his blue-gray eyes. And you have a theory that I'm salivating over. I need you to get to it.
So Kindred Mother Lumnos' eyes were gray. Remember that all of the Kindred had gray eyes. She gifted her offspring with blue eyes at the foraging, but hers always remained gray. And when the Fortos king is about to die and Fortos' Kindred father speaks to Diem in the king's final moments, his scarlet irises turn smoky gray. So again, we know that the Kindred's eyes are all gray and the different colored eyes are specific to their offspring. So I think that Luther has blue-gray eyes because it was a direct gift from Blessed Mother Lumnos. Mother Lumnos sent Luther's father a vision that his firstborn son would be the most powerful of the Lumnos descended and the unquestioned heir to the crown. And the mortal woman his father was having an affair with bore Luther, his firstborn son. That's why his father was at least initially willing to let his half-mortal son live. Plus, on the note of half-mortals, I believe half-mortals can be more powerful than the descended because descended come from the kindred and their mortal mates.
Well, and this could also be why his magic is working at the beginning of Burn, even though the foraging spell has been cast. And also, let's bring up another half-mortal, Zelaric, who is super duper powerful.
Exactly. So what if on the whole, half-mortals are blessed because they are an embodiment of the legacy that the kindred wanted to leave behind, children of both worlds?
I love this theory. That makes so much sense to me, where it is like, that is just canon. That is just canon in my head.
Let's round out this bonus episode with the top 3 things we each are excited about to learn /read /experience in Burn of the Everflame. And it's in no particular order.
Because literally all of it is number 1 for me.
I know, right? Just all of it. Yes.
So for me, the first one I'll bring up is the vision that Luther and Diem are sharing and seeing that come to light on the page. It feels like so much of what we are working for as a reader and Penn is working for as a writer is leading us toward this climax of the series. And I cannot wait to see how it plays out on page. Specifically the Silver Fire. What does this mean? I'm so excited.
So that's definitely one of mine as well. I suppose to elaborate on that, mine will be to see how Diem brings about this balance in the world between the mortals and the descended. Like I was mentioning earlier, there are centuries, possibly thousands of years of prejudice and hatred on both sides. And I have no idea how the ending will come about where the united world presumably begins healing.
Yes. Another one of mine is this wedding. We know from when Penn was on our book club meeting, which just like, can we take a moment? Like that was so fun and so amazing. She did such a good job. It was so great.
She is just so sweet and she was so welcoming. And we had about 200 of our Patreon members on with her. And we just had so much fun. There were so many great questions for her. And Penn, if you are listening to this, thank you so much. And everybody give her just a gigantic virtual hug because she's the best.
Yes. And if you were not there live or if you are not a part of the Patreon, you can join the Patreon and the recording is on the portal. So you can you can watch it. You can watch it even though you weren't there live. But on the note of this wedding, when Penn was talking about it, she was mentioning how it was one of her favorite scenes to write. There's a lot of good, there's a lot of bad that happens. Those scenes that she writes that she has mentioned are some of her favorite are also some of mine as well. So I just have a feeling that I'm like, take me on a ride, Penn Cole. And I just have a feeling it's going to be such a cool scene and I cannot freaking wait to experience it.
Another big question for me that I'm so excited to see answered is, how is Ophiuchi going to be defeated? Will Diem get to keep her magic from the bonded bargain she makes with Sophos? Or is she going to end the series with no magic? I could definitely see that happening.
I'm not against that trope where the FMC ends the series with no magic. For me, it always needs to be done very tastefully.
Yes.
I trust Penn to do this extremely tastefully. Like there's a few authors that I trust wholeheartedly, and Penn Cole is one of them tenfold. For me, last one I'm really excited for, and this will probably shock no one, is the mating bond reveal. I can't wait. My hopeless romantic heart cannot freaking wait. Whether they're already mates, which we both believe they are, or they declare themselves and bond in Burn. Knowing how Penn writes romance, I know we're in for a ride. I also am feral for their sex scenes that we're going to get in Burn. At least one. I don't care if it's many. I don't care if it's one. I just need one to satisfy my little heart. Luther Corbois is a delicious man, and I really hope we get more sex scenes with him, because wow. I listen to that and I have an out-of-body experience.
A hard left turn here for my last one. Who is Andre's killer? Like, I really do want to know. I want to see the consequences of how that plays out. I could even see Henry being the one to kill his killer, whether that is Breck or Vance or somebody else. And then I'm just going to throw one more in here. Do Teller and Lily somehow get a happily ever after?
Wait, pause.
Yes.
On that note, though, if it is Aemond, because Henry saw Aemond kill those children, and it would be so fucking poetic if Henry kills Aemond.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Damn it.
Yes.
That's good. Or Taryn. I could see Taryn killing Aemond as well,
yes.
But I think that the poeticness of Henry killing him would be pretty delicious.
I wholeheartedly agree. Whether that is Aemond killing Andre as well, I'm like, that would be very full circle there. Oh my goodness. Okay, I'm going to throw one more in here just to end on a very high note. Hopefully high note. Do Teller and Lily somehow get their happily ever after? I mean, again, I know they're only 16. They are young and in love, and it's really cute. And I certainly did not end up with my high school sweetheart. But please.
I know. And Sarai and Tybalt. Like, we know that we're going to get a lot more of them.
Of course.
I have a feeling they're going to end up happy. I hope that Teller and Lily get a happily ever after, and somehow, like, maybe there's magic that's poured into Teller and he'll have a super long life. So do you think that they're going to be mates? Teller and Lily?
I think so.
I think so too.
It's going to be an example of a mortal being able to be mated to a descended.
I think you're 100% right.
Yeah.
God damn it, I can't wait for this book.
Ooh, and maybe they will be part of the two who really bring the mortals and the descended together, because they will be a physical representation of a mortal and a descended being able to be mated, which they didn't even realize was possible.
Well, and let's say that Teller and Lily actually rise to power, and they are the people who lead the mortals and the descended together. And then Luther and Diem get to go off and have their goats and their apple trees, and they can go and be normal. And this would be like if they don't have their magic or whatever, like they can just go off into the sunset and be normal. And they could do that if they're also leaders, but I think it's a little bit harder.
I love that idea. I don't know if that's what we're going to get, but I love that idea so much.
I just want them to have their goats. I also want to point out, if the apple slice is what, like he's like eating an apple and he slices his chest open, and that's what like stroke the mating bond. They also talk every single time they talk about their future. There's apple trees in them.
That's very true.
And that's so fucking cute. God, I love this book. All right, folks, we could probably do 4 more hours, but for our sanity, we need to step away. That is it for this Burn of the Everflame bonus episode.
There are just so many Easter eggs and lore, and I love it. And seriously, like, I have so many more things that I want to talk about. Nicole and I, like, quick behind the scenes here. Obviously, we're doing our ACOTAR series. Like, we were not able to do a deep dive of these 3 books ahead of Burn of the Everflame. But dang it, we wish we could have.
This would have been a delicious series to deep dive and speculate on what's going to happen. Like, you know, if you've been with us through our Empyrean coverage, like, one of the things that Lexi and I love most about these types of books is figuring out, what could this mean? What are the double meanings all here? And this would have been a fun book to do before Burn of the Everflame.
Well, speaking of our deep dives, next episode, we will be back to our regular schedule on Monday of ACOWAR episode 4, covering chapters 22 through 28. It's a prison episode. Buckle up, everybody.
It might have been one of the hardest episodes we've ever done, but I'm not gonna lie, it's definitely my favorite of Vaca War so far. Like this has taken the cake. It is so delicious, and the Mass vs. Madness for this episode is probably my favorite we've ever done. So good.
It's a good one, yes.
Thank you, as always, to our executive producer, Hayden, aka our sanity manager. We love ya.
And if you are wanting author interviews like the one that we had with Penn Cole and to listen to it yourself, be sure to join the Patreon party. We have so much greatness there. We have a fantastic Discord. We have book club every month. We have early access to our episodes and so much more. So please do be sure to check that out and support us. It means the world to us as independent podcasters.
One of my favorite parts about our Patreon, and specifically on our Discord, is after we release an episode, we have a channel or a post devoted solely for people to talk about that episode. And whenever we do episodes like this, like we did with When the Moon Hatched, or like this one, people are always in there sharing their theories, or they're expanding on our theories. And they bring up things that I'm like, I never would have even thought about that. So that is a really beautiful perk. And I can't wait to see what they say about this one. I'm so excited.
And another way to get more Fantasy Fangirls is, of course, to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Fantasy Fangirls Pod. We have so much more on there.
Please do not forget to also rate and review this podcast. It is so helpful for any and all podcasts that you listen to. And last but not least, please share this episode with your fellow Kindred Curse friends. We literally talked about 45,000 things on this episode. There's lots for you guys to discuss.
All right, we'll talk to y'all soon. Bye-bye.
I know one of the things Hayden loves to do is whenever he knows that we like go off track or we like step away for a second, he loves to like highlight the entire section and press delete. Hayden, you'll be doing that a lot this episode. A lot. When she's stabbed, it feels warm, which is the same Lucian. Which is the same.
I actually wrote Lucian several times when I was saying Luther here, like my brain.
Oh my God.